Well, it's noon. It's September the 9th, 2024, and we're back again with another episode of Lunch and Learn. Always good to have you here with us. Sometimes if I was in your shoes, I'd probably be thinking, do they know anything else to talk about? That's why we put this thing out there saying fireplaces, flex, and flex connectors again. Yes, again. Tony, why again?
we we have fumbled the football. That's why we got to get this right. And I know what we're going to get into is some of the contractors aren't doing, but Lord, we got to get the word out for the inspectors to pass it on. And some contractors are, but we got to get this flex duct and flex connector thing down. And we're going to have to keep hitting it till we get it right.
Well, let's back up just a minute. We're always glad to have Tony Woodard, who is the chief inspector for the state. We appreciate the state allowing him to take his time to have these lunch and learns so that we can get the word out, just like Tony was just saying. And yeah, sometimes we have to repeat ourselves. And one of the things I want everybody to realize is that there are about 7,500 people in the state who have a continuing education. And as far as lunch and learn is concerned, we only get to talk to about 4,000 people. Now, that doesn't mean that all 4,000 people sign in, but that's the number of people we have on our email list to let them know that we're going to have it. So almost 50% of the people who would need a license are even aware that we're having these. So sometimes we have to repeat because those 3,500 plus people don't know them. So please, when you're talking to your neighbors, you go out for coffee, you're talking to even your competitors, let them know about Lunch and Learn so that maybe our whole industry will be better off because you shared that information with them. All right, Tony, why flex and flex connectors again? We just said that, so let's move on. What is the difference between flex and flex connectors?
Okay. A flex duct has a rating, a little more stringent rating than a flex connector. Is why a flex connector is limited in length, limited in size. It can't meet a vapor barrier, moisture barrier. It will penetrate. They do make some different types of flex connector, but they're limited in the scope of their work to a 14 foot, where the flex duct cannot. I mean, it can be supported and continue on if installed properly. It can go a long way.
Well, we've got a slide here that talks about similarities of when they're tested. You know, they're
Correct.
both tested to a class O or a class one. And I guess you can pick whichever one you're going to use. I've never even seen a class O. What are you used to that, Tony?
Yes, we have seen that in the hospitals is where they use
Ah,
that a lot in industry. And it's confusing. You think in your mind, I've got a class one and I go to class O, but it's actually the opposite. The class O it's the more, it won't burn. That's what it is.
hmm.
It's a stronger product, more expensive product. I had an inspector in the Paragould area, I believe it was called, and said they had a gentleman who had someone to use it. Absolutely, you can use it. This is our minimum code to class one. You're going well above, and absolutely you can use that.
Hmm.
The class O.
Well, that's interesting. Here, I wanted to get to this right here to show you, to let everybody see that there are some differences in the way both of them are tested there.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's where I wish I had the photos of the fire. I went back and tried to find them of my neighbor's house that caught on fire. Basically, further in this presentation, you're going to see a fireplace with the flexible connectors, combustion dilution air, and it had a tear in it. And when the fire caught up into the box, it wasn't cleaned
Hmm.
properly, and it backed through the box, went through the flex connector in that weak spot. It just burned a rapid hole in there, and that's what caught his house on fire. Once everything got ripped out, we were there live at the time. I was
You
I
know,
was there with them, and these things not being protected and being tested for the penetrations. That's why it's metal. That is a metal application for that. And that
I've been surprised, Tony, as I've been studying code, how much of our code relates to fire. And I never really thought about what all we did had that much to do with fire. But boy, we have talked about in the IRC, the IBC, the National Fire Protection, and our code all goes into trying to protect homeowners from possible fire when we make mistakes.
you're in the heating and air industry, and I didn't deal with fire when I was in business from 1987 to 2000 when I went to work for the state. And then I got my education in the fire side and then went and got fire certified. I mean, that's the truth. We don't think about that, but we are dealing with fire daily and trying to prevent fire is what we're trying to do.
We're going to look now at some of the limitations that's been placed on the use of flex and flex connectors. You mentioned it just a while ago about the difference in length between flex and flex connectors.
Yes, and I'm glad we're using this photo because this is an electrician, this isn't a plumber, this isn't a mechanical contractor. This is done by, we've got several out there. I'm not going to throw a name out there because I don't want them getting upset, but we have 4 or 5 main players that install these across the state. And they understood about the 802, and you can see in that photo where they did go back and start putting the insulation shield, but they are failing tremendously, and our inspectors have got to educate them, and we got to get them on board. I have the state inspectors reaching out. If we need to do hands-on training, we will. Flex applies to any penetration. It's a device. This has to be hard pipe. It can't penetrate through that. Anywhere it's going to be, and the only way I know to get this to where they understand it, if you're never going to see it, if it's going to get covered up somewhere, and you're not going to be able to like walk in the attic or in a crawl space and see it, you can't use flex. Got to be hard pipe. Every scenario. That's going to be the easiest situation to do that. But we have the codes listed in the mechanical and the fire code, and we put them in here so they will see that. These penetrations with these flex connectors that they're using for the combustion dilution duct, not proper, not allowed at all.
Well, here we were talking about length, and we look at this this pipe here. How far? My goodness alive! And that's a flex connector, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's going to that back wall you see back there behind you.
Yeah. So it's hard to see in the picture. So I drew my little line there so you could kind of follow it down and say, "Oh my goodness, they ran that thing from one end of the box to the other, didn't they?"
Correct. And let's look at that picture. There's a connection that's not legal, even if it was up in the attic. This up here, where you see that draft stop, they have to draft stop in residential. That's a penetration. That's all metal. You got to get metal all the way up into that attic, and then you're going to be metal. If you want to terminate that last 14 foot into a true approved termination where you can see it, you could. But all this part in here is metal. That's your 28 gauge metal.
I'll tell you what, you're talking about penetrations. Let me run down there where we're talking. We can more easily see this right here where we're talking about penetrations.
Correct. And see, this is an area. You see how that bath exhaust is hard pipe. You see the one with the bath. And so that's going to get covered with sheetrock. You're never going to see that. That's metal. That's going to be metal all the way out in that scenario there. They ran out of the flex connector.
That's this right here.
Yes. Yeah, that's metal. That's legal. That's right. That's the way that's got to go. And I know they're listening, and heating and air guys didn't do this. These are installed by the Fireplace installers. They sell them, they send them out. But they got to meet chapter 8 and the chimney and vent section of that. They got to meet chapter 6 of the duct chapter. They got to meet actual clearances in the IRC. You got your general rules in ours, and then you're going to get back into the IRC, which talks about the fire side. So we got to stop this. We got to get better. And if you're a heat and air guy and you see this taking place, stop it. Go, hey, hold on. You can't do that. That creates a situation.
Tony, I'm going to chase this rabbit a minute because I had a phone call not 30 minutes ago questioning about, okay, well, if the V is in our name, HVACR, which has to do with ventilation, and all of a sudden we're being told we need to learn about it and be responsible for it, how is it that electricians and plumbers are still doing this kind of stuff? Why is it not falling over on the heat and air man since he really is supposed to be responsible?
I'm not going to be politically correct right here. I'm going to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Our building industry waives and does not want regulation. This needs to be licensed. The individuals installing these need to require or have a license. If so,
Yeah.
this could fall under the category of a licensed mechanical contractor, where we would see this, we would educate, we'd regulate. Right now, this is installed. The builder can install it. The homeowner can install it. You can hire anybody that's not licensed to do this. That's what's taking place here. We've got to shut this down. And our department, we're doing our best to reach out and get some. Trust me, you do not want to be brought into a hearing and testify about this when a house burns down. It's not a good feeling. You don't want that. You don't want to be there. So I'm trying to
I
help
guess
you
my
stop
point,
from being there.
the reason we have continuing education is because there are things that we need to know that will wind up protecting and the health and safety of the consumer. If we are being required to have that because we want to keep our license, because we got to learn it to be able to keep our license. On the other hand, if just anybody can come along and do it, and there is no method out there to require them to learn what to do, it's not good for the consumer. Either you need all to have a license, or their trades need to have to do some kind of training, and that's not going to happen either. But anyway, I'm sorry I took you down a rabbit
that's
hole.
Okay, because we utilize this tool, and we've got 50 on here today, but I know there'll be 150 or 200 that'll actually go back and watch this on YouTube.
Yeah.
And this is an excellent tool by way of word of mouth. Maybe somebody's brother-in-law is in this. I don't care how we get the word out, as long as we get it out. Yeah. And this is still part of our industry. It's the structure. It's protecting the citizens, and that's our sole purpose anyway. So we're just trying to get it out there. And you know, since you built this Lunch and Learn, it's been a valuable tool. And I get called weekly. I've talked to people from Tennessee, Louisiana. It amazes me who find these things and watch them. So it's reaching folks. And
well, I'll get out of the rabbit hole and come back to this one. I drew a box around this one where we could see how they made that penetration just barely got through the hole.
That's a double.
On plywood.
They went through one draft stop and then through another.
Here's another example, trying to show again how that, you know, and doggone it, Tony, you can't know what you don't know. Well, and I guess that's my point. Why I'm so big on education.
I like pictures, and you might not know, but if you would just start installing these fireplaces to the picture that comes with it. And I've sent a picture to you and you uploaded it, and I have found this in just about all of these appliances. And in that picture, it'll show pipe, hard pipe being run through that in an installation. If you just run it to the picture, you're going to be good. You're going to help protect something.
Well, here's some common limitations between flex and connectors. The temperature, you know, you shouldn't use it when it's more than 250 degrees. It's got to comply with the manufacturer's instructions. Everybody ought to know that. Your joints and seams, well, you've been talking about this for forever, making sure it's sealed correctly.
Right. We have been contacted a lot about, there is what's called the BFX tape, and I don't know if we got a bad batch of it or what, but we have gone out ourselves. It won't stick. I don't know why. Our department, I know it says on there you're supposed to use it, but if you've got a hard cast 3-inch, 2.5, 3-inch fullback, and it'll seal that and squeegee it down, we pass that just because it doesn't say, because the BFX is not sticking. I don't know why. It's just, you go back a week later on the same job and it just peels off like this. It just rolls right back off of there. And I've seen multiple brands doing that. I don't know why. We want it sealed. You get a good hard cast aluminum tape. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mastic, but a good sealed product those are UL listed. So we understand that says specifically BX, but we also want it to work and want it to seal properly.
My preference for many years has been mastic, but then again, that's my preference, not necessarily what everybody's got to do. Here's something interesting about how to support the flex and the flex duct connector.
And you brought that out of SMACNA guides. I like
Mm-hmm.
that. You went and found that in the SMACNA duct construction standard, where our ADC standards say the same thing. This is, you broke it down and explains a little more for the 1/2 inch sag. That's excellent. You got to be every 4 foot, and you have to have that 1.5 inch where you see these guys trying to use the plumber strap, or that mesh webbing is 3 inches. It's an approved for flex duct line sets and so forth. But yes, that's actually in the SMACNA duct construction standards as well. And
Well, IMC references IBC, IRC, the NFPA, SMACNA, and it'll just reference it. So I wound up having 3 screens, and I'm throw that out there to say our contractors don't have time to do that. That's
no,
again why a continuing education program that's kind of spoon feeding it, and these lunch and learns spoon feeding it can sure make life so much easier.
I'm reading a chat that somebody sent. It says, "What is the required gauge metal for duct that's behind sheetrock?" Okay, now I'm gonna step in here, and if I'm wrong, you can get back with me. But so that's twofold question there. If you're talking about when we were showing the picture of that running and it's sheetrock, if that's kitchen exhaust, that's 28 gauge minimum. If it's dryer, it's 28 gauge. In our memo through the board, they still allow 30 gauge on that bathroom exhaust from 4 inch to 10 inch. That's going to do, y'all get ready for January and the new code. That's going to go away. And Tom and I did have a meeting with distributors to only stock 28 gauge and 4 inch. That way, whatever you buy, wherever it goes, you're okay. I strongly recommend you go ahead and start using 28 gauge with all of it, because it's coming down the road. And I think that's what you're trying to ask in that question. If not, you can get back with us. All right, Tom, I'm sorry.
All right, no, that's quite all right. I jumped ahead here on a slide and just kind of threw in some additional limitations of flex duct, and I just thought it was interesting here that we've talked about dryer vents a whole lot, but it's the first time I've run into a situation where it said that it can't that connection between the dryer and the
Right.
pipe going up the wall or outside can't exceed 8 feet. And if you got 2 4 foot pieces, but you need a 8 foot length, you can't put 2 4 pieces
Yep.
together.
And
It's got
that's
to be one solid connection.
and that's why that new 5049 you have right before that code, that's why you have that penetration, that fire rated, here we go again, fire
Yeah,
rated
yeah.
penetration pan that the connector goes inside of, and it makes its connection in that. And I
And we've got
noticed,
a few guys that kind of put their toe in the water over into commercial. They'll have a friend who's going to put in a little restaurant, a little cafe, and they want, if you're not, you know, every day involved in doing kitchen work, you can sure make a mistake. For example, here, it's you can use flex, but you can't come within 18 inches of a type 1 hood. You got to be
yeah,
18
you're
inches away.
right. And I'm going to tell you from the manufacturer, NFPA 96 is going to step in here as well and be more
Mm-hmm.
stringent. It's hard pipe, ladies and gentlemen. It's hard pipe on your makeup air, on your type 1 hoods. Don't even start to run flex. It's going to get kicked out on NFPA 96. It's going to get kicked out on the manufacturer's instructions of the hood. So that's yeah, just stay away from that on your makeup air. That's all hard pipe all the
I
way.
have never understood using flex on a makeup because that's putting that duct under negative pressure, and
Yeah.
it's not built for negative pressure. It's just not.
Yeah.
Anyway, my opinion.
Yeah, that's it.
Here is our last thing we're going to talk about is just strange. And again, I'm kind of running down the rabbit hole. I could see this situation where somebody would say, well, I think I'm going to put some gas logs over here. And I've had these other gas logs in my fireplace, and I want to put in some unvented gas logs because that sounds good. It's unvented, but code says, and I leave it to you to take it to the next step, Tony.
Right. So these decorative pieces, so when you go and you buy those were made to go back in the manufactured box and appliance that it was designed for.
Yeah.
They're not made to, oh, I'm going to buy a rack and I've got my little box. I bought my little house. it had an old place, and I'm going to build one. I'm going to run me some CSST gas line over to it, and I'm going to put me a non-vented decorated gas log in my house. Very dangerous. Not allowed to do that. That is a UL listing from the appliance on. That's a match system. But I'm glad you put that in there because we have run into this.
Well,
We
I built a house and I put in a factory built fireplace. Never got around to burning a single log in it, but I wanted to see the fire. And so when it came time to do something, it would have been very easy for me to go out and find a ventless fireplace log and stick in there. And it wouldn't have crossed my mind that it wouldn't work because I just wouldn't have. I didn't realize they needed as much ventilation as they do, and you're not necessarily getting that ventilation on a factory built fireplace.
Well, I want to give a little for those that are listening, and you go back and grandma and grandpa have one of these or the old deal. And the old houses, how we grew up with that, the houses leak like, wind would blow, it'd come through one side and the other. So when you'd see those old space heaters over there and you could put a carbon monoxide detector and 88 parts per million coming up, well, that's fine because the house is loose as all get out.
Yeah.
When we build
Yeah.
these foam structures now and we start putting them in there, if you start seeing that bright blue at the bottom of that where it starts and blue coming around, you don't want the yellow. You start seeing the yellow come off, you don't have the proper oxygen, you don't have the oxygen dilution, it's not combusting properly, and you can take a carbon monoxide tester and just start sitting there watching the parts per million. That's what you're looking for. You don't want to see that, and unfortunately, this happens sometimes. That people get desperate and they can find some more things, and we're bad about bringing these portable 30-pound propane space heaters and put them in the house. It's scary situation. But I
Wow.
appreciate this lunch and learn, Tom. This was different than we normally do, but we're from the ground up. We're in the same deal, and I wanted to get this out to the industry, and I appreciate all your work on this.
Well, I guess that concludes it for today, Tony. If people got any questions or compliments or complaints, you can call 501 682 9201, 682 9201. And there'll be somebody there to take your phone call. They might not be able to do it immediately, but if you're talking to Michael there, you'll find there's not a nicer fellow in the world than Michael, and he'll do everything he can to help you out. But we'll see you again or talk to you again October the 7th on that Monday at noon. We hope you'll all come back. Tony, as always, thank you for your time. Tell Lindsay we appreciate him. Everybody over there at the department, we know you're working hard and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Tom. Have a good one.
Bye now.